Okay, folks, we want to welcome Gol TV's Phil Schoen to the show. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Well, glad to be here.
You know, first of all, I just wanted to start out, how is your stomach holding up after that USA-Algeria game?
Not so much my stomach, but my vocal cords. I'm just glad that I had a day off to recover before going back to work. So, no, it was a little scary around the house. I chased the kids away. I wasn't really exactly fit company, but then there were a few tears shed in the 91st minute. So Landon Donovan didn't just do it in South Africa, as we've seen the videos throughout the U.S. and I'm sure in many ways throughout the world where expats were. That is arguably, without much argument, the biggest goal and the biggest game in the history of the United States Soccer Federation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, it really comes across, and I know a lot of people have been saying that as the most important goal in United States soccer history. And you know, that's not to put down what happened in 1950, or anything like that.
First, no, absolutely, and it's the second time, if you want to count 1930, the very first one,
right,
where we were with Belgium and Paraguay, and I mean there was some pretty good performances there. We won the group, won both games. Bert Patenaude with the first hat trick in World Cup history. So a lot of people don't realize that U.S. history goes back before 1994. But 100% finishing on top of this group where everyone had already deemed it to England, and we're thinking, okay, well, hopefully we don't get Germany. Well, we don't get Germany, but that's because we won the group. So
yeah,
it's going to be kind of interesting how this one plays out. And I'd say that some of those goals in the 1930s were nice. The third one for Patenaude, the 1950 goal from Joe Gaetjens. Perhaps the closest has still got to be Paul Caligiuri's shot in '89 that sent the U.S. to Italy, because in many ways, if that doesn't go in, what's going to happen in 1994? And if 1994 doesn't happen, MLS doesn't happen, so this doesn't happen. So everything kind of fed off itself back there with Caligiuri, but this was huge. This basically changed the soccer fortunes of two countries, three if you include the fact that England is now going to be in a very, very difficult bracket to get to the semifinals with Argentina and Mexico. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this one plays out. But Landon Donovan definitely gave the U.S. an opening, and now they have to find out if they can drive through it.
Yeah, well, that shot heard around the world, I guess, in many ways for Caligiuri was the start of what has become the modern era of American soccer. And, of course, in 1950 we did beat England. That was a big news, and as you mentioned, that in the 30s we did quite well as well. I think, to kind of go back to the beginning, at least for the game that we just where we just faced Algeria, when the starting lineups were announced, and Bob Bradley made some pretty bold changes, especially if you think a lot of the American fans were very nervous at the start, maybe some company here as well, when they saw Jonathan Bornstein out there starting at left back.
It was interesting, and in my mind, it was one of those ones where you kind of shake your head and you go, you know what? He knows what he's doing. I can see what he wants to happen, but is it going to happen? And obviously he had confidence in Bornstein. If you actually take a look, Jonathan Bornstein statistically was, in some categories, the best defender on the field for either team.
Yep. So
it worked. He used the speed. I wouldn't be surprised to see him stick him out there again against a speedy side like Ghana, where you have Abedi Pele's son, Ayew, who was very fast, very tricky. And, I mean, Bornstein's job isn't to win everything. He's not there to shut him down. What he's there to do is to slow him down until they can get numbers back. And I think he did a brilliant job against Algeria. And the other two changes, Maurice Edu and Herculez Gomez, those were changes that were changed in one case quickly in the second half. But I was listening to some comments from Bradley and some interviews, and it's not as though, okay, I did this did not work, so now I'm going to make a switch. I do think that there are some tactical things that deserved to be a tip of the cap towards Bob Bradley. But even more so in my mind, it's the fact that he's going, okay, we're now at the half. We need to get a little bit more control of the midfield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick in Benny Feilhaber, another visionary type midfielder, and I'm going to push Clint Dempsey up front. And then obviously the switch, the other switches that were made. He's basically saying, okay, this is the game plan. This is the state where we are right now in the 46th minute. So in his mind, it's one continual chess match. And I think that there's one thing that really jumps out of this even more than Landon Donovan, and I don't know if it's going to get the just credit, right, is how good a manager Bob Bradley is. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to take a look at, number one, what they've accomplished and how they've done it, and number two, take a look at what else is going on. And in my mind, when you take a look at the total disarray of France and England and Italy, and then you also take a look at Switzerland, a team where Ottmar Hitzfeld, one of the best managers over the last 40, 50 years in Europe, basically says, I took Bob Bradley's game plan and stole it and beat Spain also. Yep. So it's like one of those ones where you take a look at some of the goals from South Africa, or Landon Donovan's goal even, where if that had been done by a Brazilian or Argentine, we're going, okay, where does this rank in the pantheon of World Cup history? Well, just because Landon Donovan's an American, people go, wow, cool goal, but you don't really think about it. When the United States goes unbeaten through the group, tops England, and were it not for a couple of bad refereeing calls and a little bit of concern in the first 15 minutes defensively, I mean, the United States could have dominated this group. So I think that Bob Bradley has really taken a step forward, at least in the coaching ranks, and against people that are at least open-minded enough to consider the fact that maybe there is an American that can coach. And we'll have to wait and find out. Is he going to be back for the next cycle? I think we might find out what happens against Ghana, but I think he's definitely kept his hat in the ring. And I think if he beats Ghana, if they then go through with a good performance against Uruguay or South Korea, then all of a sudden you're talking semifinals. So yep. I think that Bob Bradley in many ways, I mean, that Bruce Arena in 2002, when we were jobbed by another bad refereeing call against Germany, otherwise we would have been in the semis there, I think Bruce Arena really opened up a few eyes internationally, and there were a few rumblings, but I think that the performance over the last 8 years has really put a foundation under Bradley, and that if we do get to the semifinals this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Sunil Gulati has some competition to try and get a signature on the next contract.